Toby, you said you're heading out to Redmond immediately after this to work on MCP related doc. That sounded kind of cool. I was just maybe just a little peek for those of us kind of our MCP fans. What is, how much has MCP kind of exploded inside of GitHub? I mean, it seems like, I mean, I was at GitHub Universe and it was literally in every conversation. Obviously we had the night. It seems like maybe more than any organization of its size, other than maybe Anthropic, you guys have just fully embraced MCP, and it's obviously leading to some of the stuff you're doing in the product.
Yeah, we've gone all in on it, right? So we've got the GitHub MCP server, which is one of the most popular MCP servers out there. I'm on the MCP steering committee as a co-maintainer of the registry, along with Adam, who's going to be on your show. I think you said talking about code mode next week. We have been integrating the registry all over the place, and I think that's what we'll talk about today. So I was going to give like a high-level overview of this, but it's really taken off, right? Like we're 1 year into the life of MCP. And it's become this like standard for AI tool calling, and it's become a bit of a phenomenon. It's got an amazing community, and I think you guys have done a really good job sort of hosting the events and having a lot of these streams and stuff. So it's been really cool. It's just been a really fun thing to be a part of. And at GitHub, I remember, I mean, I'm only 1 year into my role at GitHub, and when I started, I kind of got to take on MCP. So I grew my role along with MCP, and it's been a really wild ride. At first, it was like, oh, a blog post from Anthropic, right, and the original reference servers, and now there's just so much going on. I think we've got almost 2,000 MCP servers published to the registry. Like you said, we've embraced it. Microsoft has embraced it. We've got a bunch of people on the MCP steering committee. We've got a bunch of MCP servers that we built across sort of GitHub and Microsoft. And I think today when we look at the registry and how we're starting to integrate it into the product, into like as governance and as an allow list and as a place for open source maintainers and startups to publish their MCP servers, it all kind of makes sense, right? Especially when you look at where MCP servers live today. A lot of them, most of them, in fact, start their lives as GitHub repos. So that's kind of was the foundation for us to go all in on this. And we've been seeing sort of a really good return on that investment from just the empowerment that all of this technology gives to AI.
Awesome, man. Well, I'll get out of your way. Can't wait to hear your presentation today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just start off. This will be quick, but I want to give an overview of a lot of these pieces and how they wire together. And then I'll hand it over to Craig, and you can start to see how these standards enable different pieces of the puzzle to connect and start to create this good amount of value. So at the sort of base layer, we have the open source MCP registry that we've been working on with Anthropic and the MCP steering committee. And what this is meant to be, and I encourage anyone to like go to this repo and give it a look and give it a star, is this is the canonical source of public MCP servers. It's not really meant to be hit by end users directly. The idea is that as an MCP author, you publish your server and your server updates into this open source registry, and then downstream registries will pull from this. And these downstream registries are meant to be integrated into platforms or add sort of value or a particular skill. So for instance, the GitHub MCP registry, which I'll also show, pulls from this registry, and we enhance it with our data. So for us, that's star counts, readmes from repos, and then we do sort of a deep integration into VS Code. And so this is an open source project. It's entirely written in Go. If you know Go or you're passionate about MCP, I'd encourage you to come take a look at this. We've got it live and hosted. We've been hosting it. Anthropic's been helping us host it. You can go through and kind of look at the API here and how all this works. If you're an MCP author, a server author, you need to publish to this. And there's a few ways to do this now. We have in the MCP registry, you can go into the docs and take a look at publishing somewhere in here. I think I had it somewhere in there. But basically, you can use the CLI tool to publish. So we have, if you look at the releases, you'll see that we've got a command line tool that will allow you to publish your MCP server. And what you do with this is you run an init, and it'll give you a skeleton server.json, which is sort of the structured file manifest that you use to publish this. And then you go through and you edit it and you change it so that it has all of your data inside of it. And then you can also hook it up to CI. So if you have like an actions workflow or something, you can use that to publish directly to the registry. And in the interest of open source, I was actually talking to my buddy Carlos earlier today, and he runs Go Releaser, which is, if you're a Go developer, you'll know it as a way to automatically publish the homebrew and to get your GitHub releases built and all this. Well, he just added support for publishing directly to the MCP registry. So we're starting to see this open source standard get adopted by not just GitHub and not just Anthropic, but really big open source projects. Because if you look at Go Releaser, he's got quite a few stars here. So starting to see more and more ways to get your MCP server into the upstream open source MCP registry. Now, downstream from that, you'll see, for instance, our MCP registry. So you'll notice that we only have 54 servers in here and not 2,000, like I said. Part of this is because we're being very cognizant of just working out all the bugs in the OSS registry. So we're very much building that in public, and we want to make sure it's really secure. But these 54 servers are coming from the open source registry. So we're sort of allow listing them now with partners, big open source projects, our own stuff. You see a bunch of Microsoft here. And like I said, we're enhancing this by sorting it by stars. If you go in here, you can see the READMEs for these things. All of this is sort of a work in progress, but our goal is for within the next month or two to open the floodgates and just allow self-publication to this. So this is going to jump from 54 to 2,000, 10,000, 20,000, right? As soon as we start seeing this sort of get adopted by more and more people. And so stay tuned for that, but this will be self-publishable very soon. But this right now is just a curated set being synced from the open source registry, which actually makes it easier on all of these server authors, because as they publish new updates to their MCP server, it automatically gets synced to the GitHub MCP registry. And let's take a look at how this works, because one of the things that we do for integration into our platform is installation, one-click install into VS Code. And so if I'm on the GitHub MCP registry and I find an MCP server I want to use, I will just install it in VS Code. And it's going to take me in here. I think I already actually have this one installed, so let's maybe not use that. It'll take me in here and install the MCP server somewhere in here. You can also see that part of our integration is that we've got this is loading, the servers in VS Code themselves. So when you're in VS Code and you're browsing MCP servers under the extensions marketplace area, all of these are coming from the GitHub MCP registry. So once again, once we open the floodgates and make this self-publishable, you'll be able to see your MCP server show up directly in VS Code here. So it's kind of a cool integration. And one of the things that we're doing, and I think Craig will talk more about it, so I'll kind of transition it to him after this, is using this open source standard API that we're defining in the registry as a way to help unlock enterprise adoption for MCP servers. So if you talk to big companies, often you'll hear a lot of excitement about MCP, but they're not ready to go all in on it because they're worried, and I think correctly so, that there might be malicious MCP servers, there might be buggy MCP servers, there might be a workflow that sort of exfiltrates private data. And so what they want is a governance layer around MCP usage inside of their organizations. They want to say like, okay, we're comfortable with these 3 MCP servers from the public MCP registry, and we built, say, like 12 MCP servers privately that we use as like the finance department and the design department. What we've encouraged people to do, and what we're starting to build in the GitHub, is create a registry that adheres to this open API standard. And what we've done is allow enterprise and org admins in GitHub to go in and put any registry that supports this API in as the allow list for everyone who's a member of their org or enterprise. And what that means is that we then pass that registry to VS Code, IntelliJ. We're starting to support it in all of our surface areas. And those are the only MCP servers that people in that organization will be allowed to install. So this starts to unlock the door for enterprise adoption. And so we're excited to work with you guys on that, because this is sort of part of the talk that we're giving today, is that you're starting to adopt this standard. So you can use Obot as your allow list and your governance engine sort of for MCP usage inside of your enterprise.
Yeah, exactly right. All right. Oh, sorry. Okay. So I'll pick it up from there and just kind of explain using Obot as that governance layer for your enterprise's own MCP registry. Just really quickly, I'll jump into a demo, but just to explain what we're looking at here, this is the basics of what you're going to see. VS Code is going to reach out to GitHub. The user is going to authenticate as their GitHub user, and they're going to essentially get back that MCP registry URL. Then we'll get back the list of servers from that registry. And then with Obot, the way Obot is not only a registry, but it's a MCP hosting and gateway platform too. So if something in the registry is a remote server, the connection will proxy through Obot, allowing administrators to do things like audit logging. I've actually demoed this before on the context, so I won't stay too heavily on that. Or if it's a standard IO server, but you want to run it in a secure environment, you can actually launch that on Obot and basically treat it as a remote server. So that's what we'll see. I'll actually start by just jumping into, just show really quickly where you control this in Copilot. In GitHub. So if you go to GitHub in your organization and then jump down to Copilot policies, you'll see there is configuration for MCP servers here. You can turn it on. Here's where you can drop in that allow list MCP registry URL. And then additionally, this option basically says, should they only be able to install things in the registry, or is that sort of just the starting point for browsing? But from there, I will open up VS Code. And cool. And then we'll just see super quickly here, we'll browse MCP servers. You can see this is the list that Toby just showed. So this is GitHub's MCP registry. What I'll do from here is I'll go ahead and grab our instance of Obot and drop it into the registry URL. So off of Obot is software you can install in your enterprise. It can be in your cloud environment, wherever. But at basically /v0.1/servers, you'll hit the registry endpoint that exposes the servers. So if we now go back to code in VS Code, I actually have to reopen it. It seems like it works best if you reopen it and then pull the list up again. You'll see this list is now being pulled from my company's instance of Obot here. And you can do things. Ant vchart is a common one you'll see out in the world, but this is a standard IO server. Typically, you would install it on your laptop. I clicked install here. Because we're going to launch this on Obot itself, it's actually treated like a remote server. So I'll click allow, and VS Code will kick me out to basically authenticate with my instance of Obot and kick me back. And now we can see, sure enough, this server is installed and you can access it. Where the governance comes into play is when an admin comes to Obot, they can control exactly what servers users have access to. So that list of servers was basically every server that we've granted access to all Obot users here. So if I were to you can see I say everything in the global registry. If I get rid of that role and we just say, just Gmail, confirm, update, pop back over to VS Code and refresh my list here, you can see, okay, now users only have the option to install Gmail and nothing else. I'll say one interesting note here about how this worked with authentication. I think shortly before Thanksgiving, authentication on the listing servers part of the registry spec was merged. And I don't think that support for authentication is in VS Code yet. But basically, should your registry endpoint be unauthenticated and anyone can hit it, discover servers, or should you have to go through a very similar OAuth flow to MCP servers to see what you have access to? What we've done in Obot is if you've configured it with authentication turned off, then anything the admin has assigned to all Obot users will show up in the registry. If you configure your Obot instance to have authentication turned on the registry, then that'll be customized to you. So, if I said Toby could hit Gmail and AntV and 2 other servers, when he hits the registry, he'll just see that smaller list. So the idea there is simply, by team or department, your security team, your DevOps team can control exactly which servers are discoverable by your end users. So I sped through that pretty quickly. That kind of is at the end of the day what encapsulates this ability. And like I said, with Obot, you can have all these controls for governance, for historically doing audit logs, and you can even control exactly how servers are deployed, how much resources they get, all of that. Obot's open source. You can pop over to Obot platform/Obot, give it a star if you like. You can install it yourself. We just released support for this MCP registry endpoint yesterday. So I'm excited to see folks trying it out and giving us feedback.
All of this is very early, right? And so this is why we're building in public. Like you're literally hosting stuff off of localhost as we talk through this. It's been like us working together for the last few weeks. The auth point is a great one, right? Like we don't support that yet in VS Code because we just merged that in on right before Thanksgiving, like you said, but the use cases and the demand is there. You have a design team, they should have the Figma MCP server. You have a development team, they should have the GitHub MCP server, whatever's personalized for your role in the company. And so one of our goals with getting the authentication merged into the registry was to mirror exactly how OAuth works on the MCP servers, because we want to make it easy on the hosts to implement this, right? Like they've already gone through. That's been shifting sands as well, right? The OAuth flow on remote MCP servers, and it's a lot of work for the hosts to adopt all this, and it's changing yet again in the latest version of the protocol for the better. But what we wanted to do is just piggyback on all that work and hopefully allow these hosts to reuse a lot of the code. So we didn't want to do anything that was any different from how you would authenticate into a remote MCP server. But ultimately, we'll see that in all these surface areas as well, where we identify you as a user. You won't necessarily have to make your entire list of your company's MCP servers public to the outside world, right? Like it wasn't an issue at first so much because a lot of these people are running it on private networks, which is one way to sort of block the access. But ultimately, it makes a lot of sense to get the auth in there. And you guys are very well positioned to do that, right? Like you already have this role-based authentication and you can give back the server list. And it's great to see that you have the audit logs on there, because once again, these are the big issues that are blocking sort of MCP adoption in the enterprise. And so I think as products like Obot step up and to do this, it's really going to help get adoption out there for some of these more bigger, maybe more conservative companies with sensitive data. So it's great to see all of the pieces like come together, and it's kind of fun that we're building this in the open, right? Because you don't always do this. Sometimes it's like, oh, we'll go heads down and we'll come out with the perfect product in 6 months. But because so much of this came from the MCP steering committee and this open source project, and MCP in general is very open source, we get feedback, right? And this has allowed us to connect and start building on this more so than if we had at GitHub gone heads down and built this without any feedback. So I think it's a demonstration of not just how MCP works, but how open source can work to really fulfill even bigger companies' needs like this.
100%.
It's interesting timing wise, because as we think about where we are right now, it's just like we're like just almost where this is all going to kind of come together. I mean, I think about like, it's great to have a client like VS Code out for developers, and that's going to be your early adopters of this. But, Copilot Studio supporting this, I'm hoping, and I'm almost confident that that's probably coming. And then suddenly you're like, oh, this is going to ideally be in almost every platform, and I'll be able to very quickly jump. N8N will have support for this, and any of my other sort of agent development platforms would have support for this. So building a kind of a generation of tools that can take advantage of this is what I'm looking for. My question to you guys, and maybe this is a Toby question more than a Craig question, is like, how far away are we from those things? Like, do you feel like we're 3 months away from the rest of the client ecosystem supporting this? Because right now it really is like I'm struggling to find other clients besides VS Code that have even adopted the registry stack. I was reaching out to Block, and Angie actually was like, hey, Angie, any chance you guys are working on adding this into Goose? And I'm really curious if you're hearing of other client developers that are building this in.
Well, interestingly enough, if you remember the first MCP Dev Summit in San Francisco, Alex was on stage with Tatis and I, and our demo was actually getting this into the Goose Extensions marketplace. So I have faith in that team, and Angie's amazing, and everybody's over there is amazing. So I think that they'll get in there. VS Code is funny because we're so on the bleeding edge there, and Harold is on the MCP steering committee, but they have like tens of millions of developers, right? So it's not just a small project, which I think helps get some adoption and desire to put development resources in from these other hosts to get it. I think at Microsoft, we're all in on MCP, right? Like across the board. So you'll see it get picked up. It's just because everything's moving so fast, the downside to that is some of the bigger players are waiting to see, like, okay, when does it stop changing, right? Like when we've got auth in, it's all working. We've gone from this V0 to V0.1. Are we going to do V0.2? There was a lot of discussion around what should be in the first API shape, right? Like, do we need a display name for servers, right? We went back and forth on that one for a long time because there was potential for spam, but really ultimately one of the things that kind of won over this argument was when we were at the last MCP Dev Summit in London. We had the steering committee meeting, and I'm like, guys, we got to capitalize the H in GitHub. Like, how else are we going to capture this capitalization that we need? You know, if you don't do that, everyone's going to wig out. And so they're like, okay, we got to get the display name in there. And I think now as well, I'm hearing that like Anthropic and Stackblock and a bunch of other people are operating in this space, and so we're starting to hit these same needs, right? Like, oh, we need auth, right? This is a need. So once the requirements have been thoroughly vetted and we use VS Code, one of the biggest pieces of software in the world, to sort of like deploy it, I think we can look at that as a reference implementation, and you will see it get picked up elsewhere. And I also think once we at GitHub open the floodgates to the self-publication, and you've got I've made a server, I publish it, and it shows up on GitHub /MCP, that as well is going to spur adoption, and then it'll be a bit of a carrot and a stick, right? Whenever you have these like two-sided marketplaces like this, you have to get the ball rolling. But I think we're doing a good job of that. We're getting more and more traction. So it's not immediate, and I'm not even going to say it's like 3 months from now, but this is a foundational layer for the future of agentic development, right? Like AI needs to use tools. And so this is going to be there for hopefully decades going forward. So we're moving as fast as we can at this point, but I do expect to see more adoption, and probably like you're alluding to, outside of the developer space as well. Hopefully sometime this year.
I think I couldn't agree more. And I'll tell you, as a person who uses AI all the time across lots of different tools, like I'm not a developer by trade. So I use it in VS Code, but I use it in other platforms all the time. The idea of being able to have, even outside of work, but just to be able to have a personal registry of all my MCPs that I have wired up, configured, kind of tied into better auth that I trust, and that I don't have to run locally, don't have to install, and can quickly jump back and forth between OpenAI, Claude, Anthropic, VS Code. Like, my MCPs should be centralized. I should have all my MCPs at my fingertips wherever I go. And I don't really, honestly, I want them in, I want them next to Siri, right? Or I want them in Google. I want them everywhere, because I want one for my Amex, and I want one for my United Airlines, and I want one for all the other things that I'm expecting to see MCPs on in the next years. And that side is only going to happen when I can really sort of tie my identity to my MCPs and then drag them around with me because they're mine. And I think that is actually probably how it's going to end up. Maybe it'll be a super agent that I tie it all to, and that comes with me, or it's going to be my MCPs in some kind of a catalog. But as soon as that materializes, I just see the experience for my dad, for my son.
I love that use case, your personal ones, right? That you rolled with your data. Yeah,
it's like I can do this, but it's a pain in the ass. I spend so much time reinstalling and updating. It's just a pain in the ass, and it's like, oh, this is fine for techies. It's fine for developers. It's fine for people who are doing this because they are super excited about the tech. But my wife just wants us to work with all of her shit, and ideally through talking to her phone. Like, that's how she's expecting it. And so this is awesome, guys. And really appreciate you coming on, sharing this, showing what you're built. And I've been hearing this from Obot users for a while now. Is like, could we get sort of more of a standardized approach to registry? Can we put this stuff together? So I'm very optimistic we'll see this in the next year become a kind of key part of how people are thinking about their internally MCP infrastructure.
Yeah, and thank you guys for embracing the standard, right, and pushing this forward. It's important for GitHub and Microsoft to do this, but it's also important for startups and open source developers like Carlos at Go Releaser, right? We're seeing so big companies, startups, open source individuals. It's great to just see it like across the board, because I think that's what it takes to really make this standard.
100%.
Well, thank you guys, because honestly, it's like we get excited about this stuff, but there's nowhere to run it without a client. It's really
Yeah.
hard to show the value. We've been just like, well, we have our own little client, but it's not the client that people are using every day, right?
Yeah.
Like our web-based inside of Obot client is fine for people that are just looking for something fast, but the really powerful clients need to be supporting this, because we are in a multi-client universe, and I think that's not going away. Like I personally want to be interacting with AI through all sorts of different clients. I have a feeling.
Me too.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much, and really appreciate the work, Toby, Craig.
Yeah, thank you.